Welcome to The Backlash, a weekly exploration of America's awakening. I am your host, Rebecca Hargraves, joined as always by Mr. Dave Riley.
Hello.
Hello.
I am also awakening with this beautiful, amazing, delicious cup of Above Time Coffee Roasters coffee.
Do you know how NPCs just constantly say mundane stuff about politics or say like they're social conservatives, but or what is it? They're fiscal conservatives, socially liberal. You do that word vomit, which is called logorrhea, with ads. Ads.
Logorrhea? What is this? I've never heard of that before.
It's mouth diarrhea.
Mouth diarrhea
is the direct translation.
But it leads to income. It leads to making money. Showbiz.
Once again, beating the allegations that he's Jewish, Mr. Dave Riley. How are you doing, Cam?
I'm doing good, folks. Happy pre-Thanksgiving.
Happy post-Thanksgiving.
We did pre-record this show.
Hope you had a wonderful time with your families.
We do.
Carving up the bird, eating some food, getting fat, unbuckling the top button after a long day of eating.
Yep, indeed. You can find us on X at Real Backlash, our website, thebacklash.net. Support us on subscribestar.com/thebacklash, patreon.com/thebacklash. Send your super chats, never mind.
Not today.
But you can donate to the website.
You could send super chats. I just can't guarantee that we'll read it.
Yeah.
In a timely manner, in any way,
please
shape,
send
or
us
form.
super chats.
Send us some money, please.
Follow us on YouTube at Real Backlash. Follow us on Rumble, Backlash Podcast, Instagram, Real.Backlash, TikTok at Backlash Pod. Thank you so much for joining us today. A big thanks to our sponsors, Above Time Coffee Roasters, handcrafted small batch coffee, Idaho Tallow, that is skincare without endocrine disruptors, and publishers of white positive literature, Antelope Hill.
It almost made it sound like Idaho Tallow was publishing pro-white literature.
That'd be a strange crossover. Like, here's a bar of soap and Mein Kampf.
But I hope that you were able to take advantage of their White Wednesday sale.
It's called White Wednesday?
Well, it's a little after the fact now, but yeah, last week, Antelope Hill had a White Wednesday sale. It's like Black Friday, except White Wednesday.
White
Wednesday.
You have to say it like that. You're legally entitled.
Legally required.
Required.
That's Jared Taylor's intonation, right?
It is indeed.
Wednesday.
Okay,
Wednesday. We're going to be talking about the importance of community building.
Hold on. We still got Atlas Bullion for your gold and silver needs.
Look at those gold prices. 41.45.
Oh boy. I picked a good time to buy a little bit and bought it like 4,000. Not bad.
Yep. Uh-oh, text from your wife.
Oh, geez.
No, 12/3 is the sale of White Wednesday.
Oh, well, so you'll have a chance to partake in the White Wednesday. That would be happening today, actually. That'd be happening right now. You could go to antelopehillpublishing.com right now and take advantage of their White Wednesday sale.
Are you done?
For now.
Okay. We're going to be talking about community building. We're going to be talking about marriage, dating, what we should do as a community, as a movement to help bind communities together. People have a real problem. Cameron sent me this article about the loneliness epidemic. It wasn't an article. This is a public service announcement, basically.
From Health and Human Services.
Right. I don't want to get too into it, but a 2022 study found that when people were asked how close they felt to others emotionally, only 39% of adults in the U.S. said they were very connected to others. Things have gotten so much worse, especially since COVID. The objective measure of social exposure is way down. People are spending 24 hours a month more alone.
This is our Surgeon General.
Yikes. People are not engaging with friends.
That's under the Biden administration.
Oh, okay. Good. Hope we got
people are spending way less time with friends.
Guy.
People are not developing close relationships with others. They're not keeping in touch with their families. Only nearly 90% of people have 3 or more confidants. That was way less than they used to have. So we want to talk about this. We want to talk about why people are so lonely and our attitudes on marriage, because I am having a hard time getting people sold on the marriage idea.
The marriage question.
The MQ.
The MQ.
So let's start with that. Why should people get married? You're going to have 2 pretty similar perspectives, one different perspective. We're going to try to sell Cameron on the MQ. over here on the backlash. So why do we get married? For those of you that know my story, I was boss babing it, doing a really bad job. Really bad job. I was living in New York, and I was like, I am never going to have a family if I continue the way that I'm living my life. I'm never going to have a family. I was dating the wrong men, not in the way that you might think. I wasn't like hopping on the back of some guy's motorcycle or whatever. I was really into
Oh, I could say something.
Mopeds.
Right. I could say something right now that I should not say.
Don't. I was really into like the wrong type of man in that like emotionally unavailable beta male artists.
Oof.
Yeah.
What?
I don't know what to tell you.
That is not what I envision.
Yeah. If you guys looked at my dating history,
As your type.
you would find it shocking.
I mean, I envision Chad, the captain of the football team.
No.
No,
Chad,
you like the weird outcasts? You like the Conor Oberst?
yes.
What's wrong with
is
you?
exactly, which is not, it was not the right type of man. So I made it my life's work to find the right type of man, to date appropriately, to be in a career that would allow for family formation. And I rooted out all the degeneracy in my life. I quit drinking, which was a major problem for me. And I started in a very calculated way dating. So I watched this. I've talked about this on my YouTube channel. This Jewish woman did a TED Talk about finding a husband. And she basically did this methodology. She had spreadsheets, all sorts of stuff where she was able to reverse engineer finding a mate. So I took her TED Talk and I implemented it in my dating life. At this point, I had moved to Seattle, and I was scoring all of my dates based on this methodology so that I didn't get, what'd you say?
I said, of course you were.
So that I didn't get swept up in emotions of dating or physical attraction or anything like that. I wanted to know, like, am I fundamentally compatible with this person? Now, I instituted this in Seattle. So most of the guys that I was seeing, I didn't even have to put them through the algorithm. I was like, nope, like we are not on the same level as far as politics are concerned. I was dating a lot of libertarians because I was like, well, that's pretty close to conservatism. No. And then eventually I met my husband, Match.com, met him on Match.com. And I think that people should get married because it is the natural state for our people. I understand that we're in a difficult social time and that men are having a really hard time. I am very sympathetic to this perspective. I don't want to make it seem like it's easy to find a mate. I mean, in Dave's situation, it was. His wife just kind of fell into his lap, not literally.
Hey, careful.
I said not literally.
All right.
But if you treat it like a job, if you take it really seriously, it can be done. And we're going to talk about why you should do it. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you met your wife?
Me?
Yeah.
How I met my wife? Haven't I done that before on this show?
Well, keep it brief then.
Well, I mean,
I can tell the story of how I met Dave's wife.
well,
I can talk about it.
I guess, like, for me, the thing that's interesting or whatever is that when I was in college, I was definitely of the opinion that I never wanted to bring kids into the world. Like, that was the worst thing. Like, look at how messed up this world is. Look at how hard it is to get ahead, and college debt and credit cards and apartments and, living in Boston. It's not going to happen, And so I thought it would be like an insane act of cruelty to bring a child into this world. Of course, I wasn't religious. I wasn't Catholic. I was a horrible person. And that changed, Blonde and I actually did a podcast about my conversion story, which you can go watch on her channel. Mm-hmm. Found a rosary, changed my life, that whole thing. But when I became Catholic, it helped orient me. It helped reorient me, but really just orient me the first time, because society doesn't orient people properly anymore. School doesn't teach you how to be like a good, normal human being. They teach you how to be a worker bee in a cubicle performing tasks given to you by your boss.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what modern education has been since the Rockefellers and the Carnegies got their hands on public schools. So I had to be oriented for the first time when I became Catholic. And with that, comes this understanding of marriage and what life is about. By the way, Costa Canubi, have you ever read that? Probably not. Costa Canubi is one of the seminal documents written by, I think it was Pope Pius XII on marriage. And the primary function of marriage is the procreation and education of children. At least traditionally speaking in the Catholic Church, that's what marriage was. Now it's changed since Vatican II, and they've leveled out the mutual love and affection and help of the spouses. And that now is as equal as the procreation and education of children. But before, having kids was the most important thing, and educating them and raising them to be Catholic, to know, love, and serve God. And so, like, within that framework, you know, you go back and you can look at the French Revolution, which my family was in, smuggling priests and stuff like that. You can look at the Spanish Civil War, and you realize that, hey, we're born into a world at war. And so knowing that, it's like, well, okay, I'm going to raise up an army.
Yeah.
I'm going to find a woman who wants to endeavor on this project of creating new humans for civilization.
Right.
And that was the basis of us getting married.
Yeah.
Me and my wife, not you. It wasn't like...
Not your work wife. Not your work wife.
Well, I mean, like, you know, it's interesting. I was just reading a journal last night, and it's like, I was writing in college, I want to find love. And it's like, that's total bullshit. You don't need to find love. You need to find another human being who will help you, who you can help, that you're compatible with to make kids.
Yeah. And I want people to start thinking about love differently. Like, one of the reasons that we have a high divorce rate is that people are citing irreconcilable differences. And a lot of that is that you fall out of love. But love is not what people think it is. It's not like your high school
Disney
boyfriend. It's not like rom-coms. It's not like feeling butterflies. Love is building a stable life for your children and raising them in the way that you have, that you both see fit.
Right.
And that's really what love is. And you can build it like a block at a time, like a stone at a time, while doing these things. So if you find somebody and you're like, well, they're not giving me that feeling. It's like, well, are you guys going to be able to build a life together? Are you going to be good parents together? Are you going to be able to not get divorced? Because that is the making of a lasting relationship right there.
Well, and I mean, I don't disagree with that at all. I would just add to it, and my wife and I say this to each other all the time, you marry your cross.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, pick your punishment.
Yeah.
Right? You're going to get married. It's going to be difficult. There's ebbs and flows with it. You got to roll with the punches and figure things out, you know, especially in today's modern society where the formation of human beings is so radically different, whether you go to public school or private school or Catholic school. You know, the preconceived kind of notions are so radically different between people.
Right.
So picking the spouse is very important. But you're not just picking the spouse that's going to help you. You're also picking your cross.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Right? And
marriage is martyrdom, and people need to realize that as well. It's going to be difficult, and you're going to have to work through major trials and tribulations that you never anticipated. And the thing that you have to do is just commit to not getting divorced under basically any circumstances.
Yeah, and that's pretty difficult. I mean, this is I pulled this up on the screen. I was looking at it when we were getting ready. But yeah, this is marriage. This is what marriage is. You're getting crucified together on the cross, and that's it.
Yeah.
But when it's about raising kids, when it's about educating them, loving them, bringing them up to hold your heritage, your traditions, you know, your ancestors, your fatherland, when you're imbuing that in your kids as a project, that brings people together in a way that love, or whatever, it just doesn't have lasting power.
Right. And when you have that with your spouse, you don't really need to have that much else in common.
No. And you don't need to go on dates for 6 years, please.
Yeah.
I took my wife on 3 dates. I proposed on the third date.
She's a tolerant woman.
Yes, she is. Granted, I vetted her. We vetted her. Rigorous, thorough vetting, much better than our southern border. I remember when we first kind of got the idea of like, maybe we would work together. I was like, hey, why don't you go hang out with my parents for a weekend? And so she drove down to Pennsylvania and like went to a picnic and went to mass with my parents. And I called my parents and was like, am I crazy? Or is this woman perfect?
Yeah.
They were like, no, you should marry this one.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
Yeah. It's good to get outside opinions like that too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. We're supposed to be selling Cameron on the idea of marriage.
So you guys, you're not really selling me on this whole proposition of marriage. So let me just use your own words against you, just for the sake of fun. And you can tell me how wrong I am and how rewarding marriage and children and so forth really is. But to use your own words, finding a mate is problematic, and it's not something that should be about fun or the sizzle or the sparks. It's not a rom-com. It's a job. That's what Rebecca said. For Dave Riley, it's your cross to bear. Then once you cross the finish line, or maybe you start the race, depending on how you want to analogize it.
Yep.
Marriage is hard. It's difficult. It's trials and tribulations. Oh, wow, that sounds glorious. And it likely will not work out. And that carries severe consequences, right? Especially if you have children, because then the children get divvied up. And oftentimes there's a lot of rancor, and there's a lot of acrimony because the spouses are turned against one another, and then they try to turn the children against one another. And Dave reassures me, yes, but it's your responsibility because you have to martyr yourself, and you're going to be crucified. Okay, great. So what are the benefits of this enterprise?
Well, wait a minute.
Let me take this one.
I want to take this.
I want to take this one.
I'll fight you for this.
Okay, fine. Go ahead, but be brief.
Just so the audience knows, I'm to some degree playing devil's advocate, but
no, you're not.
I do think these questions need to be answered, but I will say one other thing to contextualize a little bit. Dave Riley and Rebecca Hargraves, I think, are very happy people, generally speaking, and I think a lot of their happiness accrues from the union that we call marriage. So with that, over to you, Rebecca. Sell me on this thing called marriage, which seems to be a precarious minefield that could blow me up at any moment.
Okay, I want to push back on this thing that most people get divorced. That is not true. When you look at the 47% of marriages end in divorce statistic, that includes all people, no matter how many times they've been divorced. So if you've been divorced once, you're considerably more likely to get divorced again. And it includes all minorities, which have a much higher divorce rate. So when you look at first marriages of white people and you look at first marriages of white people that are Christian, we're talking about less than 10% divorce. 10% divorce. If your family prays together, if you are white and you are in a first marriage, you have a 90% chance of marital success. Now, 10%, that is significant. Because divorce is one of the most damaging things and traumatic things that any family can go through. And that is where choosing your spouse based on lasting things that are not fleeting emotions is going to be incredibly important. The other thing,
your parents aren't divorced.
My
right?
parents are not divorced.
My parents are not divorced.
Yeah.
Cameron, are your parents divorced?
No.
So this is very odd. I just want to point that out because growing up, and especially when I started to get involved with like nationalist circles, everybody came from a broken home. Everybody. The amount of to find somebody with parents that were still together was like a miracle.
Yeah,
but that makes sense, does it not, Dave? Because marriage, as we're going to build on throughout this episode, that is in many ways a proxy for the social contract. So if you grew up in a household that was broken, never mind the intangible damage that it does to you, right? We know, particularly for young men, if they don't have a father figure in the household, they're far less likely to succeed for a range of reasons. But effectively what they're seeing is society crumble, right? And that tends to, again, reflect on their broader view of society as a whole. And nationalists, I think we can all agree that society as structured is broken. So that actually makes sense to some degree. I do think we're perhaps the exception to that, but I would also add that we're also a little bit older And the baby boomers, the baby boomer generation, my parents are baby boomers, at least my father is, they tended to stay together. And it gets worse the younger you go, right? So that's part of it too.
Yep.
Well, divorce rates are down.
Yeah, I was going to say this is, according to Twitter, divorce is down 40% since 1980. But at the same time, wrong tweet, marriage is also down from
and
30
that
years
also
old.
means that out of wedlock birth rates are up, right?
Sure.
So that means a lot of men in particular, but men and women are being raised in single parent households.
Yeah.
And that may or may not be reflected by those divorce metrics,
Right,
right?
right.
So either way you slice it, you're coming basically a very large percentage, maybe a majority of the American population, the white population, right? Because this used to be a problem that was peculiar to the Black community, right? We know everybody's familiar with that report that was published in the 1960s, right? That addressed the failure of the Black family and so forth. That has become the failure of the white family, right? So that I think that's irrefutable, irrespective of the marital rates.
Yes. You touch on something important. All right. I'm seeing a lot of alternate ways of bringing children in the world to avoid the marriage question. And this is a huge problem. I'm seeing people like Pearl advocate for these situations, the situationships where you have a child out of wedlock, but you kind of you keep the woman around. So I want to talk about that a little bit because for better or worse, although we have major problems in marriage, we cannot be bringing children into the world out of wedlock, outside of the nuclear family. By every metric, even in the white community, things turn out worse for them. So the marriage situation, the nuclear family, we have to, if we want to have kids, and everybody's worried about the birth rate, but then they're so afraid of marriage that they won't get married. If you want kids, you have to be married. It is the best thing for your child. So I know that this is not an ideal situation. I know that it's difficult to navigate, but it is the only way that you can bring children into the world in a safe way.
Safe and effective.
Yeah, really. And if you do that out of wedlock, I mean, your kids are going to be screwed because marriage, it binds you to the other person in a way that's irrevocable. If you have children. And yes, that means that you can have half taken by your wife, that there can be infidelity, that there could be differences of opinion on how you raise your children. But that is better than the alternative, which is that either spouse can leave at any time with no repercussions and break up the family much more easily. And that situation, it requires a much higher level of trust for your partner. This is the only time I'm going to use the word partner. For your partner, because I'm saying outside of marriage, because you have to be like, okay, this woman is not going to leave, although we have no financial entanglements. This man is not going to leave, although we have no financial entanglements.
Is that how you get hyphenated last names?
Yeah, really.
How that works.
Partnership.
And everybody that I've ever met with a hyphenated last name is a problem.
Yes.
Just saying.
It is.
Now, now, there was a question that was posited to both of us. I think I have to now respond, right?
Okay, yeah.
And this was like, sell me on marriage, right? There is literally nothing in this world that you can do as a man that is more important, more grandiose, more... I don't even have the words to describe than making a family. If you want to talk about like reaching the height of your career, reaching the height in your field, your job or whatever, there's nothing that compares to being a father.
Oh, yeah.
Period. Yeah. And there has been a crisis of lack of fatherhood in this country. That's a problem. And so there's an area where you need to step up. People need to step up. But, the act of creating a person intentionally, bringing them into the world because you're going to train them to continue the fight that you're fighting, to eventually win the war between good and evil.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is the seminal thing that any man could possibly do.
Or any woman. Yeah, absolutely. So I look throughout my life and I like to think I'm pretty accomplished. I've accomplished a lot in my life. I've traveled the world. I have degrees. I had a pretty good career and in my YouTube channel and all of this. And then when I had my daughter Emmeline, I was like, wow, nothing I've ever done in my life has mattered.
Right.
Totally insignificant pursuits of my ego. None of this matters at all.
Right. And it's like radical when it hits you that you've got this life that you can help shape and mold and propel into the future. There's nothing else as consequential that you could possibly do in this world than that.
Yeah, right.
And if you're white, and if you're like a self-described white nationalist, or if you're concerned that the white population of planet Earth has gone from 30% to 7% in less than 100 years, then you should see this as a problem and pitch in to save the white race.
Right.
Because, I mean, really, at least as far as I'm concerned, this whole saving the white race thing starts and ends with me having kids. They're going to grow up to love their faith, to love their family, to love their fatherland, and to continue the tradition that I have received from my parents, that they have received from their parents, and on and on.
And if you truly care about your ancestry and your people, you have to have children, especially if you have good genetics, Cameron, if you have good genetics. And as much as marriage is a cross to bear, that is necessary for family formation, and it is necessary for having children. So we just have to accept that there are suboptimal circumstances that we need to navigate as individuals.
Well, I didn't mean that it's like only a cross. There's obviously joys and benefits that go along with it.
We should talk about some of the benefits.
Well,
we're not doing a good job.
You'll have to give me a minute. I'll have to figure those out. I was just
Are you serious?
I'm kidding.
Of all of the people, we were just talking about this, Dave and I, before the show started, and he was surreptitiously recording me, a la Richard Spencer.
Oh, come
No,
on. We need to bring him on the show, by the way.
I know, right? We were just talking about this, but there is a competency. Dave was talking about how women need to be submissive. They always need to listen to the man and everything like that. And like,
True.
Because men are usually right. And then I was like, listen, we are in a fatherless.
No, I was usually right.
Fine, whatever. we are in a society where fatherlessness is a problem, and there is a competency crisis amongst men. So we are engaging in situations where the woman's more competent.
Well, I mean, look, this is the whole thing, right? Like Marxism, communism, modernism. They tell us that men and women are interchangeable economic units of input and output that can be substituted and changed at any time, that there's no difference between men and women. And that is not true. There are things that women do better than men. There are things men do better than women.
Of course, yeah.
And the two coming together to be one flesh, it's like my wife and I always joke that like between the two of us, we make up one whole competent person. It's true.
And 80% of it is your wife.
Got to do some wife glazing on the show, that's for sure. But we're not going to be doing any wife jack posting. That's
before we move on. We should talk about the benefits of marriage. Okay, you always have somebody that's on your team working towards the same goals that you are.
Hold on. Before we get to the benefits of marriage, though, I feel like there's another aspect of this thing that needs to be addressed, which is the divorce thing in general. Catholicism, Orthodoxy, and if there's some Protestant group out there that doesn't allow divorce, that's news to me. But that'd be cool. I mean, from what I understand, Catholicism is the only religion that prohibits divorce and contraceptives and abortion, obviously. But coming to it with this religious view that you're making a vow that if you break it, you're going to hell, and that it is that grave, and in the Catholic Church, there is no divorce. You cannot get divorced. There's an annulment process whereby you find out that you were never actually married in the first place. That's how annulment works. That's what it's supposed to be. That, like, you know, when you go to get married, if you're drunk, you can't give your consent to being married. So if you're out partying the night before and you're like hungover at the altar rail, was your judgment impaired? Could you really give over your life to this other person? And so in annulments, that's what they're finding out, is whether or not the marriage even existed in the first place. So divorce doesn't exist. And I feel like when you're talking about a man and a woman coming together in 2025, in this day and age, in the current year, having that religious backing of certitude that my eternal life now depends on me not leaving my spouse, That is huge.
Yeah.
That's so huge. And I know that there's a lot of non-Christians that watch this show. I get it. Good luck. I'm just saying it'll be a lot easier if you're Catholic.
Benefits of marriage. Cameron's over here looking at us like he feels sorry for us. Benefits of marriage. All right, you've always got someone on your team.
My taxes are always done on
The
time.
taxes are always done on time. Yeah.
Well, actually not.
Working towards the same goal throughout life. That's huge. It reduces your loneliness. Access to sex. There's that. Shared financial goals. You're gonna have to help me out here.
Well, I mean, for me and my wife, it was like coming together to form a corporation.
Yeah.
It's like I want to engage in activities that I cannot do by myself.
Yeah.
I want to engage in activities that require a man and a woman to make a family, to build a dynasty.
Right.
Not that I'm going to be, czar or some bullshit like that, but that mentality behind it, that like time to do something consequential and having that, and being able to fulfill that. I mean, again, I think there's a joy in that, in being like, we're going to make lives. We're going to, and there's something to it. Like, I remember the first time I heard my daughter cry. Unbelievable. First time I heard her say like a Hail Mary on her own. It's like, holy shit.
Like, we made this person.
Yeah.
Oh, the other
first
thing
time
about
that
marriage.
I remember one time I was driving her home from school and she's like, Dad, can we go to church and pray? She's like 4 years and 10 months old. That's what I'm talking about. That's cool. There's nothing cooler. There's nothing more rewarding, more joyful than a moment like that, in my opinion.
Having kids is a lot of fun too. It's not all drudgery.
Yeah, you get to
they're
play.
always doing fun. It's like having a court jester in your house. They're always doing funny.
Drunk midgets.
Yeah, they are like drunk midgets. Yeah. I lost my train of thought. Damn.
The perks, benefits to being married.
One of the greatest benefits to marriage is that you default to gender roles in a marriage. And I know people are fighting against this all the time, but it's actually very easy for a man to emerge in a masculine role in a marriage, to become the head of the household. And for a woman, there's no more vulnerable or feminine position to be in than being pregnant. You have to rely on your husband to protect you, take care of the family, because a lot of women just can't really do very much during pregnancy. And so you do default to these positions. And if you reinforce them on a daily basis, like I do a ton of cooking and cleaning and things like that, then you can get into a situation where you're in a more natural state of being human. And that kind of it runs contrary to the way that we're expected to act in society. And so you can create a microcosm where everything is more normal within your own household. And that is a retreat from the world, from modern society.
The other key benefit that comes to mind when it comes to getting married is that if you select the right partner, your road to heaven is going to be easier, right? You've got to deal with issues of concupiscence, right? Sex, masturbation. These are issues. And having a spouse to help you legitimately deal with those passions, it makes getting to heaven easier.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to go your whole life as a single man attracted to women. You're not a priest. You're not like a monk. You're not like dedicated to celibacy or something like that. And
Like, what do you do?
it's tough, man. It's tough. Like being a single celibate priest is a calling and not, few are chosen, right? Same with monks or brothers or something like that. The default state for humanity is marriage. That's how we propagate ourselves, right? Like that's like a default good. And so when you choose the right spouse, it helps you get to heaven.
Do you want to put Cameron on the hot seat? Hey, Cameron,
I'm
why
not
aren't
opposed.
you married?
Cam, what you doing, bud? You got to save the white race.
So let's talk philosophically for a moment before I answer your question.
It's not a beer.
What is a man and what is a woman?
Ask Matt Walsh.
Union, right? A man, I think, fundamentally is an idea, right? What did Camille Paglia say? She said, "Women are, men must become. What must they become? They must become an an idea that is exhibited in their character, in their value system, in their worldview, in their philosophy, in the structures that they build, or the wealth that they accumulate, the empire that they realize. That empire can be imaginary, can be tactile, right? It can be of great wealth, it can be of great freedom. But ultimately, a man is some kind of substance that creates an idea. And ideally speaking, what a woman represents is the reception of that idea. She is the receptacle of that idea. And the product is a replica. It's procreation, as Dave said. And that ideally is the best of you both, right? This is sort of the philosophical, metaphysical construct at a very esoteric level, but nonetheless, this is effectively what it is. However, for those mechanics to exist, there have to be a few things that function properly. One is to the female, because the language of courtship, the language of dating, the language of pair bonding, that is a female language. It's a female language that for most men, not all, but most men who are trying to acquire or pair bond with a woman, that they have to learn. It does not come naturally to most men. It did not come naturally to me, although it was probably easier for me than others because of some of the intangibles that I possess. Being fluid with language, right? Having a natural sense of self-confidence, being athletic, those sorts of things lend themselves to that attractiveness that makes the facility of courtship a lot easier. However, even though that's the case, the woman is ultimately who decides. She must evaluate the idea, the spirit, the value set, the value of that man, and then decide on that basis, okay, this is a man who represents a substance that I want to reproduce, right? A replica that I want to create. And again, ideally, something that's taller, stronger, faster, more intelligent, more beautiful than me. That is essentially her natural default wiring. However, I think you could make a strong case that that wiring, particularly since the 1960s, and I think it's accelerated since the 2000s because of online dating, but also because of the dopamine hits, right? The microwave society that we live in, that is short-circuited. And so when a woman evaluates a man, and I'm talking specifically about American females here, although I think you could broaden it to Western Europe as well, and you might even be able to broaden it further to urbanized societies. It is noteworthy that you have a very large percentage, and you guys probably are not aware of this. I think to the tune of 50 million is the number of women in China who are 30 years and up, and they're called the Shengdu. And these are women basically that are discarded by society. They do not have husbands. They will not reproduce. They are just sort of on the margin of society. And this is a real crisis. And how did that happen? It happened for the same reason that Morgan Stanley published a report several years ago about the she economy, because a lot of these women acquire wealth in a modern society that regards or renders men as a nice to have, as superfluous. And that also tends to distort the way they evaluate men. So no longer does a man possess value because of this metaphysical principle, right? Because of the ideas or the value set or the worldview or the charisma or the dynamism, whatever. Those things are there. Maybe they're marginally interesting, but actually it becomes a game of who's tallest, who's richest, who's the most handsome, and short circuits that entire metaphysical plane. And you might say, well, isn't that the direction we should head? Because ultimately what you're trying to reproduce is the tallest, the smartest, et cetera, except that's not really happening. What seems to be happening is that women are selecting men purely on the basis of some kind of instinctual urge to copulate with the most attractive man that they can. In a Western sense, that tends to translate with or translate to the tallest. That's it. Nothing else. Even income doesn't necessarily predict pair bonding very well, because there are a lot of rich guys out there that will pay dating gurus enormous amounts of money because they cannot attract females. So, in other words, if you go back to that fundamental picture, there's something that has short circuited, and that means that regardless of the utility of marriage, right, of how important it is to society, you simply have a female population, a very large percentage of females that regard marriage as optional, as superfluous, as something that they don't necessarily need to do. Now, that has always been the case. Okay, there's always been, in fact, marriage has not been the default. I think it's the ideal, but it has not been the default for most of human history. But it has been in this country. And I do think that a big part of our success is absolutely marriage. And I think the religiosity in the community that Dave and you mentioned is a big part of that. And that also has broken down. So what does that mean? Well, what I have insisted to people, what I've suggested is that we are at a great turning point. This is not the end of our society. We're not going into some kind of demographic abyss. This is what a lot of people on social media talk about, right? And they've become very famous for saying so. But actually speaking, I think fundamentally what you and Dave are arguing is correct, that even though women have sort of short-circuited this natural instinct to find a man, pair bond, and recreate or procreate with that man and have children, even though that has been to some degree short-circuited or degraded or marginalized, it's still an archetypal force. Call that constituted by God, right? Call that an archetype, whatever word you want to use, but it's there and it's still strong and it wants to reconstitute itself. However, in order to do so, we have to reset society, right? Which is why we have the podcast that we do. It's why we articulate the views that we do. It's why we place the importance on God and Christianity and community and so forth. However, that means that there's an adjustment period, that there's a transition to get to that reset. And I have suggested that that reset is probably a decade. It's probably going to take a decade plus or minus. And that means that I think, and this is imprecise, but I think it's probably going to turn out to be correct, that a large chunk of millennial men and women, probably on the older side, and remember, millennials tend to be born between 1980 and 1999. So you're talking about the generation, and I was born in 1984, that the generation that was born in the 1980s, by and large, they're not going to have functional marriages. They may not get married at all. And a large number of them, not the majority per se, but a large number of them will not have children either. However, that does not mean that it's a lost cause. I think that for that generation of men in particular, that our mission, and this is what I've articulated on my YouTube channel and in a lot of my writing, our mission, those of us that are not married, those of us that are not reproducing, our mission is to initiate that reset. It is to stabilize or restabilize society so that our succeeding generations will have that equilibrium. They'll have that natural pair bonding. They'll have the opportunity to actually reproduce the way our parents did in a healthy, nurturing family. Because part of what you hear with Rebecca and Dave, even though I think they made the right choice, they have children, and I think fundamentally they get the purpose of it. It is to procreate, right? Your children effectively represent immortality as God intended, right? Because your children carry your spirit, your essence, your genes, etc., forward into the world. But for that chunk, those of us born in the 80s, our mission is going to be somewhat separate. It's going to be to facilitate this change. Now, to your question, Rebecca, why am I not married? I've had the opportunity to get married twice. Once when I was very young, I was 21, I think. And I was mature at that age. I was a 21-year-old man, so how mature can you be? But I think by and large, I appreciated the magnitude of the relationship I was in. And this was a relationship that came from natural networks. I was set up with this woman. We came from a similar background. We had similar values, and it worked because of that. And in fact, I would argue what's really missing for people out there is that those natural networks just don't exist anymore. And that's part of why the female psyche is short-circuited right now, because women depend more than anything else on social proof
Yes.
to find their. They need other women in particular to say, hey, look, he's a good fit. He shares your values. He goes to the same church, his father's friends with your father, et cetera, et cetera. That is completely gone. It's vacant. It's not there. But it was there for me when I was 21 years old. However, as men, we have a choice. Our life can unfold in a variety of different ways. And the template that I have argued is most accurate for men is basically in your 20s, you are in a stage of humility. You fail, you fall short, you are disoriented to some degree, to use Dave's term. You're trying to figure out this thing called life. Women are on a different track, as we know. We can get into that if you want. But men, fundamentally, in our 20s, and there are exceptions to every rule, our job, and if you're listening to what I'm saying, your job is to achieve humility. And many of you feel humbled. I certainly was humbled in my 20s. I failed and failed and failed at a lot of things. That's natural and it's necessary. However, should you get married in your 20s when you're failing? You can. And you can grow with a woman during that period of time. Although I would argue today it's much harder to do so. In fact, it's probably the most difficult it's been to do something like that in American history for all kinds of reasons. But nonetheless, your job as a man in your 20s is to be humbled. In your 30s, it is to recover. It's to build, right? It is to apply the lessons learned in your 20s so that you can get a firm footing and start to build. And by the time you're in your 40s, you start to achieve self-mastery, right? It takes that long as a man. It takes that long. And then I would argue that the rest of your life is posterity. And posterity, and again, this is to Dave's point and yours, posterity can only be achieved if you bear children, right? It is truly the only mechanism by which your estate can pass into the future. So it is incumbent upon you to have children. And I plan to have children, but I didn't get married at 21 because I was a very ambitious man. I remain so. I remain a very ambitious man. And that means that I have not built a castle. I am in the process of building my estate. And I tend to urge men, unless marriage is their myopic focus, that they need to build that estate first. And that is sort of analogous to realizing their potential. Now, we're all on different trajectories. Some men are extremely ambitious like myself. Others are less so. But I knew that if I were to get married, that would carry some cost because it would constrain my ability to fulfill my vision, right? To realize the building process in my 30s, to achieve the self-mastery in my 40s, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That may not be music to your ears, those of you in the audience that are sort of married to the idea of marriage. And it's not for everybody. But I do think as a man, you have a little bit more flexibility. And remember that if you achieve that self-mastery and you maintain your sort of youthful vigor, you can still attract women that are substantially younger. And that has certainly been my experience as well. So the answer is I was on a separate track. I stuck to that track and I'm still on that track. And if and when I realize that estate, and I'm not suggesting there is a defined, tangible line when it is achieved, but I suspect that when it's realized, that sort of pair bonding, that matrimony will manifest. Now, we'll have to see, right? But I will finish with this point. What we increasingly know about human physiology is that if you treat your body well, and this is, again, something that represents the intangible value that you get from a metaphysical belief system, right? The Christ or a community. If you nurture your spirit, your vitality as a man will get stronger with age. You won't necessarily shrivel up, right? You won't go gray quickly. You won't deteriorate physically. Your mind will maintain its engagement, right? And that has certainly been the case for me. As I said, if you nurture, if you cultivate that sense of self, a lot of men don't do that. A lot of men tend to self-destruct. And that self-destruction, obviously, that sort of terminates that trajectory. But if you maintain that heading and continue to work and improve and develop, then I think life begins at 40 to some degree, which is what Carl Gustav Jung said. Again, for men, this is different for women, right? So try to rewire your brain a little bit in that sense, because as important as traditionalism is, and it informs the way we should look at the world, we also have to adapt. We do live in a different kind of world. And that means the way that we date, the way that we interact is not going to be exactly the same as our ancestors. And we've got to retool. And to some degree, that means we have to build new ways of community. And guess what, folks? That's what this podcast is all about. That's what we're doing. We're helping you adapt traditionalism to the modern world, to build community in a new way. And ultimately, that community, I think that the realization of that community is marriage and children. So yeah, I plan on having those things, but it's the empire building to some degree, Rebecca, that I have embarked upon first.
You mentioned something. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I have so many notes.
So many.
That I just took.
Okay, let me get mine out really quick.
Go ahead.
But you mentioned something about the perspective that men have about women and vice versa in the modern era. I think that this is a really important place where we get stuck, especially in the manosphere, is just being focused on this demonization of the modern woman. Now, recognizing that it is a problem is a very important part of navigating these relationships and deciding whether or not you want to marry. But getting stuck in this idea that every single woman is a useless whore that's going to take 50%, you will never be able to get out of that mindset and transcend into the kind of man that can find a woman that does not fall under that category and build an empire, unless you realize that women too are products of a dysfunctional, subverted Jewish culture. And there should be some empathy for all of us that have had our souls and our spirits damaged by modernity. Go ahead.
I was just going to,
Just real quick, Dave, before you say something, this is a very good point, because I do think that the manosphere in particular, and I do not spurn the manosphere. I think it is an important development that has helped a lot of men. But you're exactly right. And you do tend to get MGTOW types. You do tend to get this sort of toxicity that directs a lot of vitriol at the female. And this is a fundamental lack of understanding, in my opinion. Are there lots of women that have fallen prey, to this sort of mind virus that has weaponized them against men? Absolutely. This is irrefutable. And this is something that I think in our daily lives as men and women, the women that are like you, Rebecca, that have awakened, this is a self-evident reality. And it's an uncomfortable reality, because you have to deal with a lot of these folks that are very dangerous in many ways, that they're unpredictable, they're toxic. That being said, this emphasizes, or rather this conundrum bespeaks what I talk about all the time, which is frame. And frame is an unspoken interpersonal dominance. And that is best encapsulated in the value system that you have. So as an example, I interact with a lot of younger women, because I live primarily in cities, right, where the demographic tends to be younger. I'm not in the suburbs a lot. And so when I interact with them, what you do learn about a lot of women is that while they certainly gobble up a lot of the propaganda, they also are looking for frame. Again, this is part of their instinctual hardwiring, right? They're looking for that masculine archetype. But that is a bit tricky, because that requires that you have to recognize that as a man, and you have to learn the dynamics in which you can assert your frame, in which you can flex, not your wealth, not your income, not your social hierarchy, but your value system. Because ultimately, as I said at the beginning, right, what is a man? A man is an idea, and an idea is a virtue. And it is that virtue ultimately that attracts that female. So it is incumbent upon us as men to sort of corral that chaotic feminine into the ordered structure, right, of the male world, the male empire. And we do that via frame. And just to be very clear, that means that if you have a strong set of values, be they Christian values, be they a work ethic, be they a commitment to certain excellence, you are inflexible regarding those virtues. You do not bend, you do not change, you're not malleable to the feminine that may potentially challenge that superficially or otherwise in the beginning. You have to stay strong and maintain that frame. And if a woman does not accept that, move on to the next.
Yeah, totally.
This is the way it must be.
I was just going to say, I mean, listen, Eve's the one that got the fucking apple, okay? And Adam was weak. He was flexible. He was not inflexible, as Cameron said. He was weak, and he took the apple from his wife. And now we're all in this fucking mess. It's her fault. No, I'm kidding. It's all of our fault. I took a shit ton, and I don't usually take notes. I'm usually like busy finding things to put up on the screen.
We don't have to do any of that today.
I'm not doing that today. So I actually like took notes. I'm going to go backwards, I guess. So just off the top of my head, don't date liberal women. Like, if you got a woman that's been one-shotted by feminism and liberalism, just move on.
Yeah.
There are plenty of women that have not been like completely infected with the disease of feminism. Okay, that's fine. So like you can't save her, bro. It's just not going to work. Move on, like Cameron said. And then, you know, with this idea of like, if you're looking out at the world expecting a woman that's going to be a whore and cheat on you and then rip you off and take half of your money and your estate or whatever, that's what you're going to attract. There's something called the law of attraction, right? You know, I heard a story once upon a time about Randy Weaver, of all people, who apparently he really thought that he was living in the end times and that the Battle of Armageddon was going to come to his front doorstep. That's what his old bartender told me. And guess what? That's what happened to Randy Weaver. I don't know if he willed that into existence, but this happens. Your mindset definitely changes how you interact with the world. The things that you think about, the things that are top of mind, changes subtle little things that can lead you in a different path. And so if you're out there and you're blackpilling about women, which there's plenty of reasons to blackpill, but if you're not focused on finding the good one, the one that, you know, isn't going to rip you off, I'm just saying you're going to attract that. You know, don't try to meet a woman at a bar. That's generally not a good idea. Maybe Match.com is a little bit better. I don't know. But don't forget about the law of attraction. That was a note that I had. Another interesting thing that came up recently at this conference that I went to in Oregon is that women start their life with value,
right,
and lose it over time.
Yes.
Based on their choices, based on their looks, whether they have sex with a black guy.
Are you saying they age like milk, Dave? Just curious.
Who said that?
I'm being facetious.
Well, it's true. Women start with value and they lose it over time, whereas men start with nothing. And like manhood, masculinity itself is something to be attained. You have to leave the mother to aspire to be like your father, right? Whereas women, young girls, they can cling to their mother the whole time.
Right.
There's no problem with that.
But that is not linear with men. You don't just continue to accrue value throughout your life, because a woman's not going to marry a man that's like the
Leslie
age gap.
Wexner. I don't know, man. Like Hugh Hefner.
I'm an advocate for age gap marriages. My husband's a lot older than I am. And it's really worked out. My brother's a lot older than his wife. But the fact of the matter is that most people marry within 3 years of their own age. So if you're a 60-year-old man and you're super rich, she's going to be after your wealth. Yep. And you're not going to be able to have that pair bonded relationship with her. Also, if she's a sensible woman, she's going to see like, I'm not going to be able to spend my whole life with this man. And she'll always have that mentality that like, I'm going to lose him, which means that she needs to start off by loving him less, because it's going to be a nightmare when he dies. So like, you have to think that women peak early, and men, they can accrue value throughout their lives, but it's going to plateau around 40. And it's going to be a problem if you get much past that to make an age gap relationship where the woman is still fertile, unless you are so rich and you're okay with the woman being in it for the money.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I definitely think that there's like, I mean, for me, I was like 30 30 was kind of my cutoff.
Yeah.
And it happened. And yeah, my wife is 3 years younger, so that makes some sense. But
I just came back from the bathroom to interrupt your flow.
It's okay. One of the other things I wanted to mention is if you found a woman that is the right kind of woman, been vetted, you're compatible, you want to get married.
Don't fuck around.
But you're waiting to be economically stable.
Don't do it. Don't.
We're like about to go through like a massive reset, new world order, global currency thing. Something's happening. I mean, look at the gold market. Look at all the other indicators that we have. Shit's about to hit the fan. Okay, so no matter how well planned it is, when you have a wife and kids, you make it work.
You make it work. Yeah.
You make it work. Like you don't have an option. It's the equivalent of burning the boats behind you or burning the bridge.
That's exactly
you
what
have
it's like.
no option. And as a man, you have to lead your family and protect them.
That's totally. My friend described it as because she got pregnant in really quick succession with her children. So she talked about family life and her pregnancies as though she woke up and she was strapped into the top of a roller coaster. And she's like, you just gotta
go
ride it out. There's nothing you can do about it. You have to accept your circumstances. You got to figure it out.
Yeah. I mean, like now again, I'm saying if you found somebody already, if you found somebody, you vetted them, you have similar religious beliefs, cultural background, obviously same heritage. You don't want to be marrying outside of your race. That is not a sin, but it's not common sense. It's very difficult to make that work long term. But if you found a woman, don't wait for the economic stability. You could lose 5-10 years of childbearing to that.
Well, don't wait at all. Like I'm seeing these couples that have been dating for 6 years. It's like
no.
If you haven't decided to marry within 6 months, you need to break up because
you can know whether or not you can live with a person for the rest of your life once you spend 24 hours.
For sure. Yeah. People are waiting too long. Everybody's afraid of making an impulsive decision. The worst thing that a modern man can do is the most evil thing is to waste a woman's fertility. It is just a grave sin. It is a crime against her. And then they always give these women like just enough to think that she's going to marry them and have kids. And then she's wasted 6 years of her life. Now that's her fault, but I don't believe women have agency. So I'm going to blame the man on this one.
Yeah. If you're watching this podcast, 2 isn't enough.
Come on.
You got to have a boy.
I'm 38. I'm 38.
You can do it. You can do it. Something else that came up with Cameron talking, and I will confirm this. This definitely goes in the con category, but with benefits on the other side.
Con with benefits. That's marriage. Con with benefits.
Sure. Getting married did slow me down.
Yeah.
You know, when we were engaged, I was working like 12-hour days. I was all over the place, writing articles, researching for books. I was building websites, doing podcasts, all this crazy stuff.
She streamlined you though.
I guess, yeah. Well, I guess what happened is I had to become much more deliberate with my time.
Yeah.
I couldn't do
Totally.
6 projects at once. I had to focus on maybe 1 or 2 really important projects as opposed to the volume. So, you know, on the one hand, the quality, I think, per project increased, but the amount of projects and things that I could get done definitely
That's
decreased.
obviously better.
I don't know if it's better or not. I'm just saying.
This is but this is a good point, Dave. You both make good points here because a lot of men in particular suffer from empiricism. They suffer from this very logical brain that says life conforms to a very specific template. So as I said, I laid out some benchmarks and so forth. Be very careful about generalizing from the particular to the aggregate, okay? Everybody's life is going to be a little different. I know people that come to my mind as we speak who met on a whim in some random city in Europe. They got married the next week and they're still together and they had kids. I conversely know couples that you would have thought they'd be together for the rest of their lives. They were vetted, they had similar values, so forth and so on. That is to say that we're all, to some degree, on a different trajectory. And especially for those of you younger men who are trying to sort of feel your way through the dating marketplace, and you tend to consume a lot of this content that says, well, women only want men if they're 6'4" and they drive a Porsche 911 and they make 250K. That is a rational construct. And anybody that knows anything about women will tell you that women react to how they feel, not a sort of defined quantitative set of metrics. This is just not the case. At the same time, some men need women in their lives. You know, my uncle is sort of a grown-up child. I mean, he is. He's just not a very mature guy. He's a great father. He's a great husband. His wife steadied him, got him on track, pushed him into college, helped him, you know, create a legitimate career and so forth. These things happen, and she tends to be the stronger one in the household, right? So again, this is a continuum, and it's going to depend on you. Not everybody is supposed to be alpha. Not everybody's supposed to be assertive, right? In fact, I've told Rebecca many times, and she doesn't believe me when I say this, but a lot of women don't actually like alpha men, right? Because we are a little bit unpredictable, and we are to some degree off the grid, these sorts of things. I'm a case in point in that sense. So it does depend, right? But if you are a very ambitious man, if you are trying to realize a very specific vision, women, by virtue of the power that they possess, they will divert you. And that is not necessarily to criticize them. This is just a reality. It is a fact of the matter that they will create a nest that you will then have to protect. So you need to think very carefully before you cross that Rubicon if you have a very specific objective, ambition, vision that you're trying to realize. Can both be accomplished at the same time? Yes. But in today's day and age, it's rare and it's very difficult to achieve that. And both parties often end up unhappy. So I just say all that to say this. We live very different lives. It's a varied journey. Do not get wrapped up in some of these generalized trends. Just understand the trends and understand these sort of waypoints that do come to count. There are reasons why there are aggregations of data, right? But it doesn't mean, for example, that if you're 45 or you're 25, that therefore you shouldn't get married, you shouldn't do this. It's a case by case by case thing.
Yeah. And the key to being successful is accurate self-assessment, an honest self-assessment. And in this culture, in the manosphere online, we have fetishized alpha males way too much. It is, I told you about my dating history, only beta males until I married my husband. And in a lot of ways, it is much more difficult to be with him because he is focused and he does not give a shit about my inner world. That guy has asked me like 3 questions about what I do. He has never watched the show. He doesn't care about any of this stuff. And that hurts my feelings. And it takes like a certain kind of woman to accept that her husband doesn't care about certain aspects of her life, you know, and that's kind of how alpha males are. So if you're a woman, you know, be realistic. Can you handle that? Do you really want to marry an alpha male? Because to deal with an alpha male, you have to be a strong whammon. You do.
And just real quick, I don't mean to interrupt your flow, Dave, but this is a very good point for females because I actually have a lot of female friends that, believe it or not, I coach them. And sometimes people reach out to me on Instagram, and some of them are women because a lot of women have a very hard time understanding exactly what you just said. The difference between selecting what they perceive to be their best versus what's best for them.
Totally.
And what's best for them may be a guy who isn't 6'5" and chopping down trees in the forest, right? Maybe this is the guy who's an excellent father and teaches preschool. This is what you have to think about as a woman, and it is incumbent upon you to understand the difference, right? Again, a man is an idea. Right? An idea is a set of values. It's not some guy pumping iron at the gym. Don't conflate the two. They are not the same thing.
Yes. And being an alpha male is a mindset as well.
True.
Proceed, sorry.
No, it's okay. You're all just, you know, doing your thing and fucking up my flow. No, don't be a beta. Dude. I don't have any good advice for young women, frankly. I don't know. I'll leave that up to you two guys. I mean, as far as men go, I do have some good advice for young men. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute. But first, I want
Above Time Coffee Roasters.
See, now you're doing it. How is this? It's a little cold now. But even cold, it's still delicious.
Oh my God.
You got to get abovetimecoffee.com. Okay, so to reiterate on what Cameron said, there are definitely different missions for people that are single versus married, and that is, men have a degree of control over this. I'd say much more than women, in that if you are ambitious, look at Nick Fuentes, right? He's in the middle of this generational run, single-handedly battering down the doors of APAC and the Daily Wire and fucking CBS News, Barry White, all of this shit.
He would derail his trajectory if he got married.
He would be derailed. His wife would be in imminent danger. Having kids would be a nightmare for him right now. That would mess everything up, frankly. And I think he said it on podcasts before. I think he's kind of wise, and a little selfless, actually, for thinking about what that would do to his wife and his kids.
And more broadly, marriage is not for everybody. And you can contribute to the pro-white movement in the absence of marriage. This is not the only way. It is probably the easiest way, though.
Right. So with this, I don't want our program to be telling, and I know I'm advocating for marriage or whatever, but I'm not here to tell you what to do with your life.
Right.
Only you can know what to do with your life. And if you're single and you've got a mission and you can complete the mission, you can do something to help bring down this crazy slavery, fiat, debt-based system. If you can do something to bring that down, do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
Totally.
And then get married if that's what you're into. But definitely be aware of that, right? Like there are certain things that only single men can do.
Totally. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to talk about our uncle, Uncle A, but I don't think he could have done that if he were married.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so there is, be cognizant of that, be cognizant of these different missions. Like, I'm constantly seeing this on the right wing too, where Orval versus Nick versus Blackpilled. And it's like, dude, they're different strategies for different things. Mm-hmm. And all of these things need to be accomplished. There's no silver bullet. There's no guidebook. There are rules on how to live your life, but there's nothing telling you what to do next. So just be aware of that. Damn it. And what was I going to say? There was something else. Advice for young men. Whatever you do, do not have premarital sex with the woman that you're going to marry. Don't have premarital sex at all. But especially if you're going to marry that woman, I'm serious. Because the moment that you do that, you're showing to her that I guess unless you're not Christian. If you are Christian, the idea of having sex outside of wedlock is adultery. It's a sin. So if you're willing to offend God during your courtship, then what are you going to do once you've made a vow? Are you going to keep that vow? You've immediately told her that you don't really give a shit what God wants. You don't really care about God's laws and the rules. And so by having premarital sex, you're basically telling a woman, I don't care about the rules. Anything goes. It's whatever I want. And that instantly puts you on the back foot, morally speaking, as the leader of the family. She's always going to hold that over your head, one way or another. One way. And I've seen it time and time again. Guy meets girl, they're doing everything right. They have sex. They start doing it more. And then it's like, okay, we're going to get married now. And they are whipped for the rest of their lives. I'm serious. If the way not to get whipped by your woman, do not have premarital sex with her. Think about it. Ruminate on it.
Okay, this is such a man talking about.
That's a man thing. I know.
Women are the gatekeepers of sex. Do not have premarital sex because you lose your power, and then you lose the ability to get the man to marry you. Women should be using everything they have available as leverage.
I don't think sex should be used for leverage.
Of course it should. Good Lord.
I don't know.
If sex provides value, it's power, and power should be used for leverage.
Well, yeah, sure. Women shouldn't have.
Whether it should be or not, whether it should be or not,
it
is almost immaterial because it is.
Yeah.
Right. We have to live in the world as it is, not as it should be. And this is this is a part of the female psyche. It's part of the feminine energy, and that's a real phenomenon, right? These may sound like esoteric concepts, but Look, the average woman is far more powerful than the average man. And her sexual power is the foundation of that, right? And how do you measure sexual power? You can't, right? It's much easier to measure masculine power. How much money do they make? How tall are they, right? How strong are they? These are things that tend to be more physical, more tactile, more tangible. Female power is different. It's cunning, it's ethereal, it's a wave, it ebbs and it flows. That's why women can be so spontaneous, right? They can all of a sudden transform. They feel one way, then they feel another. You have to understand the nature of that power balance. That way you can prevent harm, right? And there are various ways to do it. Look, I would just say the following regarding where we are in the world right now for younger men. You basically have a choice. And these three routes, or the way I'm going to analogize it, are three paths that I have executed. And I've executed them more or less in sequence, but you don't have to execute all three. You certainly don't have to do so sequentially. You can certainly ignore everything that I'm saying, to be sure, but this is a way to think about it. You can go on the grid. Okay, think of the grid as the system or the nominal track, the 9 to 5, right? Barbecues and ball games, as was said in one of my favorite movies, Michael Mann's Heat, right? That's what De Niro tells Pacino in the cafe. Barbecues and ball games, right? That's on the grid. And that is the path that most men choose. And it is probably the right path for most men. And that, by on the grid, what I mean is you effectively follow the path that's been laid out for you. Okay. You go to a university or a college, or you learn a vocation. You then transmit that into creating some kind of economic value, right? You earn income, you attract a woman of some kind, and eventually get married. You have children. You move to the suburbs or what have you, and you raise your family, right? There's nothing wrong with that. That is going on the grid, okay? You are plugged into the way the vast majority of human beings, particularly men, live, in the United States at least. That's option one. Option two is you can go off the grid. And going off the grid means that you just break trend. Some guys go to Thailand and they live for 10 years. Some guys go down to South America. Some guys live on the beach in Southern California. Some guys create their own jobs. They become an entrepreneur, right? Some guys are artists. Maybe they paint. Maybe they write songs. Maybe they pursue a career as a musician, or they go to Hollywood and try to become an actor. All of those things are sort of off the grid, right? You're not plugged in to the normal framework of society. That's a vastly smaller group, but you can do that. And remember, you can go from on the grid to off the grid. The third path is to fight the grid. And effectively, that is what we do on this podcast. We are in mutiny against a political, social, economic system that is devouring us, that's crushing us. And we're doing our damnedest to fight that however we may. Maybe it's by virtue of creating a new party. Maybe it's participating in electoral politics. Maybe it's creating a Substack, what have you. Fighting the grid is usually a very precarious and unenviable task, as Rebecca and Dave can tell you better than I can. It tends to come with a lot of collateral damage. It can break up families, right? These sorts of things. I have executed all of these in sequence. I went from on the grid, sort of that 9 to 5 trajectory, to off the grid, living all over the world, pursuing a very different skill set, career, what have you, earning income however I could, starting new businesses, failing, whatever, to fighting the grid. I think in this present age, you as a young man, you have a choice. You can choose any of these, or you can do so sequentially. You can execute them sequentially as I described. But we are certainly going to need more men, a disproportionately high number relative to the past, to participate in fighting the grid. And that was sort of the purpose of my little monologue earlier, that I think that group from the 1980s forward, and you can reference a book like The Fourth Turning. He characterizes these various types depending on when you're born. Yeah, it's going to fall to us. And Dave sort of hinted at this too. We are going to be the men of action. We're the men that are going to have to reset the system. And that is fighting the grid. So none of you have to do that. All of you can do it. But that's a way to think about where we are in this moment. And that should be empowering to some degree, because even though society is a mess, we still have the freedom to choose. And the freedom to choose is real power, particularly if you understand what I've tried to articulate this entire time, which is that society is actually in a very vulnerable spot. And that means that we can shape it. We can save it, if you want to use that term.
Right.
We can make it better.
And on that note, let's go back to that concept of accurate self-assessment. So if you're a man and you don't really have interest in getting married, you don't think it would be suitable for you, don't try to turn yourself into the man that wants to do that. You need to go into group 3. And if you have narcissistic tendencies or psychopathic tendencies, or just a big ego and you don't care what people think.
The dark triad.
If you're dark triad, then your personality is best suited for disruption, because you are going to be impervious to some of the things that come your way, and you are not going to be good as a family man. So if you're that kind of person, or you have something else to offer the movement, then, think about that. I don't want this to turn into like, you're telling men what to do. No, I want people to know themselves, know thyself, to recognize how you best can serve. The reason I advocate for marriage in most situations is that most people are average. They're normal. They're like us. They're good in marital situations. They're good parents. They want to do the right thing. And having those people be the majority of the movement gives us such an important a stability and roots us in the things that we care about, which is restoring our ancestry, which is propagating the species, propagating the white population. And that's why I generally advocate for that. But if you're an outlier, there's no shame in that, and you can be useful and you can live a fulfilling life. If you're dealing with fertility issues, you can live a fulfilling life without children. I'm just saying this because the majority of people are going to be in our situation.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we had a whole second half of this that I wanted to get to. I don't know if we can do it or not.
Hard out.
Oh, come on. 20 minutes.
Look, my husband's outside right now.
We can make a part 2.
Tell him to wait. Maybe we'll make a part 2. But I guess what I was going to say is, like, looking at all this stuff, Cameron mentioned it earlier, there was this like massive disruption in the 1960s, whether it was contraception, right? Which contraception first became widely, thank God we're not streaming. Contraception first became widely available in 1960. That's also the same time of Vatican II, the changes in the Catholic Church, the Anglicans, the Episcopalians accepting contraception, divorce, remarriage. All of that happened in the 1960s, and we had this cultural transmission disruption. Culture ceased to be transmitted, right? Like, we weren't handed from our fathers the same thing that our fathers were handed from our grandfathers.
Right.
And so a big part of what it is that we are trying to do is to reignite the lines of cultural transmission. And that means creating new social structures, hierarchies, fraternal networks, social safety nets through your friends, through your churches, things like that. And you've really got to put work in to organize that and to create that, because older generations had that handed to them.
Right.
And we've been robbed of that.
That's right.
It's true. Right. And so there is a huge portion of this, like, family, friends, having kids, but then there's the community part of it and community building. And it's so important, and we need to talk about it. And I don't know if we have enough time.
We don't. Go ahead.
There's just 2 things I want to get to real quick, because I very eloquently stated, Dave, excellent point. At its base level, what is masculinity? Masculinity is leadership, right? And leadership is navigation. It is orienting you in the direction that you need to go. And Dave is quite right, and I hinted at it as well, that there's been a disruption. And so for those of you out there, whether you're married or not, it is incumbent upon you to provide that navigation, to provide that leadership, to close that gap, right? That is the purpose. That is why I call my Substack, my YouTube channel, etc., Men in the City, because ultimately this is the mission that is fallen to us to fill in the ranks and provide that leadership. Second thing I'll say, and I'll close with this: you guys undersold marriage in this regard, and I'm somewhat surprised that you glossed over this rather. Some would say that the greatest virtue, maybe the greatest experience, the highest good of humanity is love. And what most people will tell you, and I am guessing that you and Dave would concur, is that you do not know what love is until you have children.
Totally. Yeah.
Totally agree.
Absolutely. Did we even talk about love?
Well, I mean, only to poo-poo it because of the modern concept of love. But if you go back to the Thomistic, Aristotelian definition, love is the want of a good of another.
Yeah.
It's not this fuzzy Disney feeling. It's something very different.
Very different.
Love
Right.
can be hard.
Yes.
Love can be tough. Love can be very rewarding. It can change your life, but it's not this Disney thing.
No. I feel like if we give people a pragmatic perception of marriage, of having children, that they'll be better able to deal with it.
Sure.
It's there are such wonderful things. Like I mentioned before that having children made me realize that nothing else I've ever done has been, And I just I watch my children sleep. When they sleep, I just look at pictures of them. Like having conversations with my 5-year-old is, she's asking me questions about life and death and the world and how to navigate the world, how to deal with interpersonal relationships. And it's just amazing. It's so rewarding. One of the only things in my life that I don't regret is having kids. I just know it was the right thing. And I talked about this before. I had miscarriages and I don't even think about it anymore because I truly believe that I was supposed to have these children, that whatever fucked up thing happened in my past, whatever mistakes were made, whatever career I should have taken or any path, I never entertain any alternative path because I look at my children and I'm like, it had to be you two. It had to be you. And that level of certainty, I think a lot of parents have that, it had to be Philomena.
Yeah.
Hey,
wait, you just doxed my daughter.
Oh, you've said her name before, right?
I have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
On that note, my husband's waiting outside and he hates to be kept. You're like, just make him wait. No way. Let's do a few ads.
Which means we have to go into the advertising section of the show. My specialty, we've got to give a big shout out to idahotallow.com. If you are looking for Christmas gifts this year, you can go to idahotallow.com. They've got a signature gift box with tallow balm, chapstick, lip balm, and soap. And you can choose whatever flavors that you want. Don't eat the soap.
Should we be calling them flavors?
Scents. Scents is pretty good. But they've got all kinds of great stuff at North Idaho Tallow Company. You can get yours at idahotallow.com. They've even got candles, which they just added to their website. Candles, lip balms, face balms, skin balm.
Ball balm.
You could rub it on your balls if you want to. Yep. And they've also got a Soap of the Month Club. So definitely check that out. Also got to give a big shout out to Atlas Bullion because the fiat debt crisis system is fucked. There's been an open war between JP Morgan and the Bitcoiners. This whole thing is getting absolutely crazy. Gold is back up to $4,132. Of course, in a week, God knows where it'll be. But you can go to atlasbullion.com/backlash. Your purchases help support this show. They've got silver subscriptions as low as $55 a month, gold subscriptions to $200. If you're going to be building a family, you don't want to build that on US dollars. You want to build it on something that is really valuable, gold and silver. atlasbullion.com/backlash. And of course, our good friends at Antelope Hill Publishing, who is fighting to keep history alive amidst this regime of anti-white censorship. That's the old script. Their varied catalog includes newly updated and expanded third edition of Dr. Kevin MacDonald's Culture of Critique, the essential modern text on Jewish identity, Dr. Ricardo Duchesne's magnum opus, Greatness in Ruin, the definitive scholarly examination of European exceptionalism, as well as works by Kerry Bolton, Paul Kersey, and Josh Neal. Antelope Hill recently brought David Irving's iconic Nuremberg, The Last Battle into print and have numerous translations of historical works from eras such as Fascist Italy, National Socialist Germany, and Civil War Spain, previously unavailable in English. There's also plenty of books on contemporary issues such as transgenderism, the opioid crisis, and Christian nationalism, as well as many history books, novels, and children's books. Whatever your interest is, you're bound to find books that you like at Antelope Hill, all professionally published with sleek, modern cover art. Help us and help our people by checking out companies that share our values and fight for our cause. Visit antelopehillpublishing.com.
Thank you to all of our sponsors. And since we're posting it after Thanksgiving, but I like to observe the tradition that you think about and ponder on what you're grateful for. And it has been 1 year since we started the show, and I am so grateful for Dave. I'm so grateful for Cameron. I'm so grateful for Dave's wife, all of our sponsors, the Backlash community. You guys have made it possible for us to do this all in a year, and I'm so grateful. So a big thank you to all of us. If you want to show your thanks, you can go to thebacklash.net/donate. Dave looks like he has something else he wants to say.
Yeah, I just want to put it out there because by the time that this episode airs, we will probably have signed and executed a contract with odggsupply.com. They are your source for all of your prepping needs. If you want weird night vision goggles or perhaps some sort of like thermal underwear or a rain poncho to go rucking in the mud, these guys have got your back. Tents, bug nets.
I need that
German
zombie
military
apocalypse kit.
Absolutely.
Do they have that, Dave?
They've got it big time. Also got a shout out.
I've been looking for that.
Above Time Coffee Roasters, which we already did. Blockstream if you need a Bitcoin wallet. And you can find all of our proud affiliates and sponsors on our website under affiliate links.
And all of the places to find the show on thebacklash.net. Follow us on Twitter @RealBacklash. We love you, and we will see you on Monday. Bye-bye.
Like and subscribe.